I'm Michael Frediani. I've been a camera operator since 1989. Before that, worked as a camera assistant for 12 years as a second assistant and a first assistant when I got into Local 600 in around 1978. For the most part, when I got into the union, I worked on a couple of feature films. But my pathway kind of led me down in the arena of hour-long episodic. And even till this year, that's what I do the most work on. You can get pigeonholed. People who do sitcoms, they may not started in sitcoms, but they find their niche there, and that's what they end up doing, and they're happy in the sitcom world. Other people tend to gravitate or know people in the feature world. There's the half-hour comedy, there's the hour-long dramatic shows that are on television and the ancillary cable networks. So it's all the same work, basically. I mean, there's different equipment, but we're all basically out there doing the same thing, whether it's a big-budget movie or a fast-paced hour-long television show. We're all doing the same thing for the same goal and trying to do the same great work no matter what we do. You know, some shows that people might know a lot were going back, I started a long time ago. 8 is Enough was my first series, then Charlie's Angels. And I went from there. I worked many years for Aaron Spelling Productions, so I did a lot of those kind of fun, kind of lightweight, television series. Great to work on, lots of fun, shooting outside, beaches, bikinis, hotels, racy cars, and a lot of fun. So I had a great time with that. LA Law was on for 8 years. We came in and did the final season on that. I did Charmed for 3 years and shot the second units on that to capture all the bits and pieces they don't always get during the 8 days, 7, 8 days of a TV series. Bones has been on for going into like year 11, I think. I did about 3 years of coming in, taking over the A camera when somebody else would go out and shoot. So it's a mishmash, I can tell you that. My IMDb, I keep as up to date as possible. And the reason being, I recall a friend giving me a producer's number to call about a project. And as I was on the phone with him, within a minute's time, he was rattling off my credits. I'd never met him before. So I know that sites like IMDb, everybody's looking at those. So you want to have your credits as up to date as possible. I don't really put anything on IMDb that I don't work a lot on. I won't put anything on there if I worked a day or a week or a day here, a day there during an entire season. I really like to put things that I worked on for an entire season if it's TV, or if it's a movie, my second unit. So that's where you can find, most of my credits. So over the years, I've been in the industry for 38 years now, approximately, and I think I've amassed over 60,000 hours on the set. So it's hard to go back and remember every little thing that I did, but the major productions I did, it's a lot of full seasons. That's 8, 9 months, 12 to 14, 15 hours a day. And I actually kind of like that, less now than I used to, but I really like knowing that I'm going to work every day, 5 days a week. And I really like to work. I like the camaraderie of being on the set with people. And those people who I talk to who have retired and I've worked with a lot in the past, that's one thing everybody says. It's they miss that camaraderie on the set, the same people day in, day out. We know each other. It's a lot of fun. And that's the key thing you hear a lot of, having fun on the set. And a lot of that's lost these days. And it's too bad because it's become more serious of a business. But needless to say, when I'm on a set, I always try to find the fun in it and really get along with everybody because it's a long day. It's a long, long day, times 5 days a week, times X amount of weeks per season, or X amount of weeks per movie. And you got to find the light and you got to find the fun. And tenseness doesn't really work good on a set. I do a lot better when it's a nice, happy set. Some of the favorite shows I've done, there's a couple half-hour series that I did. One was called Weird Science, based on the very famous movie. It was nice because I still live in Burbank. That's shot at Universal. So it was like a 10 to 15 minute ride to work, 7 o'clock every morning. Got off at 7 at night. They didn't want to spend too much money. It was on the USA Network, and I hope they bring it back in reruns because it was a blast. We just laughed 5 days a week. And knowing when you're going into work and when you're getting off work is pretty much an unknown in our business. That was one of those shows where they kind of held the hours at 12, and we just laughed and laughed and laughed. Another show I did for Disney was called Phil of the Future, and I did the last season of that. Actually, it was director photography on one of the episodes, and I had a lot of fun doing that. Lots of times we look at different television shows, we're not on them, but we end up doing that show. And one of them was LA Law, and we did the final season. And to me, it was more fun to be a viewer than some of the days working on it, and for various reasons. On the last day of the last episode of LA Law, it was 23 hours. People were falling asleep under the desks on the set in the law firm. And we worked from 7 in the morning till 6 in the morning, and had a couple different directors come in, and it was very challenging. Just people just laying out. That's not unusual for people just to be exhausted. It's one of the problems, though, that's pervasive in our industry, is working unlimited hours. And it may only happen occasionally, which is not a good thing, but it takes a long time to recover from those long nights. And that's why I really respected Haskell Wexler, who championed 12 on, 12 off, 12 working hours on, 12 working off. That may never happen during my career, but I know it could happen. A lot of times people new in the business forget one thing, and there's two aspects about our business. Up until, let's say, the 60s, and working in town and working at studios, it was a 6-day work week. And it was pretty brutal on families, but that was the given thing. It went to a 5-day work week. Then if you went on location, it was a 6-day work week, because mostly everybody came from LA and they want to maximize their use in the hotels and the amount of time they had there, so it became 6-day weeks. Now, with all the productions going out of LA and incentives in different states, there are workforces everywhere. So instead of paying the local people overtime, those who they maybe do take from LA or New York, for example, it'll be a 5-day work week, which is great because you have 2 days off to do your laundry, to relax, to do some sightseeing, and then just do a 5-day work week, which is good. In the late 90s or early 2000s, the IATSE contract changed for crews so that instead of being done at midnight on a Friday and incurring double the rate that you were on, if you're on time and a half, it would go to triple time. If you're on double time by midnight on Friday, you go into 4 times. Nobody liked that. The production insisted taillights, as they call it, taillights at midnight. You know, all the trucks are closed up and out. But when we lost that, it turned into something that completely turned our industry upside down. And that is what has become to be known as Fraturday. Part Friday, part Saturday. And when you work deep into Saturday and then you're back on it Monday at 7 a.m., for example, you haven't even really recovered that Saturday you're off, let alone that Sunday, and then back at it. And then each day becomes a later call. 7 o'clock becomes 9 o'clock, becomes 11 o'clock. By Friday, you're coming at 1, 2, sometimes 3 in the afternoon or later, and you're going to work those 12 hours. So when we lost that in our contract, it turned our industry topsy-turvy, and that's one of the big problems. But it used to be able to be done all the time. Television shows, movies, midnight, you're wrapped, and trying to push back on that, whether it ever happens or not, who's to say? But it's very important that we're not overworked, that we're there. If it's a 12-hour day is an average day, we get that. One thing a lot of people don't understand when they meet you and they talk about the industry, or you become friends with somebody and say, hey, how about Thursday or Friday night we go do this, that, or the other, what time do you get off work? You just have to look at them with a blank stare and say, we never know when we're going to get off. We never know when we're going to get off. I remember early in life looking at old 8mm, maybe in Super 8 at some point, home movies, and being fascinated by that. Grew up in San Mateo, California, and real suburban neighborhood. And we would have film shows. You know, you could rent or buy cartoons, Woody Woodpecker and other cartoons, and we would have a projection screen in our garage and invite all the neighborhood kids over, and we'd have little shows, and that gave me a little bit of inkling that this is kind of cool. I remember the San Mateo County Fair. I was watching it on TV. It was only about a mile from where I lived, and the live broadcast was down there, so I convinced my parents to let me run down there. And I was more interested in the camera guys behind these huge, probably RCA TK41 cameras or whatever they were. And just like looking at those, and they asked if I wanted to be on camera, and it's just like, no, I'm just like, I want to watch you guys. And I remember looking at an old movie that my mom or dad had taken in the backyard of our house, shooting my brother with a 8mm camera, him coming to the camera, and then it cut to him going away, and I thought, wow, that was like an in-camera edit, which I thought, that was kind of magical. Not that it was maybe even meant to be. Maybe they did. But then I knew pretty much. My mom loved old movies, Virginia, and I would just sit with her and watch old movies as, you know, growing up. She knew everybody, knew everything. She loved the movies. And at 13 years old, moved to KETCHIKAN, Alaska. They had a small little town, but they had 2 TV stations. They had a couple kids from, it's like an AV class, and they read the news, and sitting there watching with my mom. She goes, "Oh, you'd probably be good at that at some point." So little did I know. Got into high school. I can't remember if it was called AV back then or media class, which it kind of morphed into. But we had a couple Sony Portapak cameras, which was a camera wired to the recorder that you strapped over your shoulder, and I'm pretty sure it had reel-to-reel magnetic tape. We did all kinds of news, and we took it out and about, and I was hooked. I knew what I wanted to do in high school, for sure. So upon graduating from high school in Ketchikan, I went to Western Washington State College in Bellingham for a semester, but I couldn't get enough media classes there. I wasn't really going to do it for me, so I got the AFI Guide to Film Schools. I leafed through that. I got accepted to a couple different places. One of them was Columbia College Hollywood, here in Hollywood, California. And it was good because I didn't have much money, so the classes were in the evening, 4 nights a week, and I could get a job and work during the day, make some money, got a loan from the state of Alaska to help me. And in 71, late 71, I started Columbia College, went 2 years there, broadcasting, Associate of Arts degree. And then my second 2 years, I got my BA in filmmaking at Columbia College, graduated there in 75. I didn't know what a camera operator was. I didn't know the difference between a camera operator, cameraman, director of photography, cinematographer. And that's probably what a lot of people don't understand, that to say cameraman is all-encompassing, and it's sort of a misnomer. I did learn in film school that, you know, there are sectionalized jobs on a set, because I'd never been on a set before. So I learned all the aspects of copywriting in my advertising class, film history, which I love, we learned that one person is the editor, one's the director, one's the camera operator. But in film school, sometimes you mix them up. Nowadays, being a camera operator is a lot more well known, and it's a job unto itself that you have to work your way up to and aspire to. Maybe stay there for your career once you get there, maybe aspire to something else. But to be a camera operator is a magnificent job, often called one of the best jobs on the set. And when you hear the term cameraman, that could mean, like I said, cinematographer or director of photography. If you're a run and gun sort of production, a cameraman who does the news or does documentaries, that term fits fine. But camera operator is used when there's also a cinematographer on the set, and two people are doing two distinctly different jobs. While attending film school, I ended up getting a job at a company called Image Transform. And what I started doing over there was a driver. A friend of mine I went to Columbia College with got me in there. And then he moved up, and then I took his job as head of shipping, two-person operation. And from there, I went into mixing chemicals for the film processing, black and white, and worked in the noisy, loud, smelly room that developed our black and white 3,000-foot reels, and did that for a long time, and then went into post editing of the commercials, and worked my way through Image Transform for 5 years. I applied for the camera local, back then was called IATSE Local 659. I applied for the training program. I think there were 1,000 people taking a test at USC for 10 positions, sort of like an SAT. Didn't make it. A couple of my friends I know over the years have done that and made it, friends with mine still. But there was an open season. I would read Variety and The Hollywood Reporter at lunch over at Image Transform. I said, if you're working in the industry in any capacity, you can apply, show your check stubs, get a letter from your employer. And I did just that about my camera work. And lo and behold, I got into, based on what I was doing there, the Editors Guild, the lab local, and the camera local. Well, as soon as I got into the camera local or got that letter, I said, I'm going to discard the other two. I want to get into camera. And it took a while, and I got into camera. I quit my job at Image Transform. At that point, I was editing, just basically editing reels, not in the traditional sense of editing. So upon getting into Local 659, I quit my job there, and it was a long process getting work because nobody knew me. There was a grouping system called Group 1, 2, and 3. Most people came in Group 3, and the other two groups had to be working full time. But coming in through the program, I became a Group 1, which was awesome. And in that year, it took me a year to get about 90 days. But I built relationships. I wrote down every name of every person I worked with. I mean, I just, absorbed everything like a sponge. I just loved being on the sets. It was awesome. And within a year's time, I landed my first series, which was 8 is Enough, and I was on my way. I was a camera assistant for 12 years, and that job has changed in so many ways in recent years since I've been a camera operator. I was fortunate that there were only a few cameras out there. My favorite was the Panavision camera. I started with the PSR, which is sort of a Panavized Mitchell camera in its own housing, very heavy, to the Panaflex cameras, very light, very nice and compact. I mean, to get that running, you plugged in the yellow cable into the battery and your zoom gun into it, your follow focus was there. You put the lens on, the rods, the matte box, the magazine, thread the magazine, mount it on the pan ahead, mount that on the dolly, you're ready to go. Nowadays, here we are in the 21st century, it's a jungle of cables, wires, transmitters, receivers, monitors galore, and it's become so much tougher for camera assistants, technicians, that, I mean, had it happened that I were a camera assistant these days, sure, I'd embrace it. But looking back at what I had and what they have to do now, I don't envy them. I mean, they all take it in their stride. They're all professionals, and that's great. But it's so different. There's so much to learn. And then their cameras come out like computers come out. It's like this technological thing. Like, if we don't come out with a new camera, whether it's a different manufacturer or an upgraded camera from the same manufacturers, like, are we falling behind? And that's sad, but it's tough. For me and us who are camera operators, I mean, we need to know something very important, where you turn it on. Because the switches are in different places on different cameras. So once we know where to turn on the camera, that's a good thing. We're going to look into a camera, and it's going to be an electronic viewfinder. So not as easy on the eye as looking through glass and in a mirror that reflects the image up to the eyepiece from the lens. So that, in fact, is something I miss. An electronic viewfinder, however, allows you to operate off the monitor, and you can do that on film cameras. There's still film productions out there, but there's certain shots where if I'm not using the wheels, the gear head, and I'm twisted all around the camera, and I'm going to put on an O'Connor fluid head instead, or a Cartoni. The assistant said, "Do you want the monitor?" I'll say, "Yeah, for the shot, I'll take the monitor. I'm way down low, or I'm going way up high, and I'm walking around, and I'm using the panhandle to move it around and hanging onto the camera." That's a nice thing about it. So you can use the monitor more readily now. It's still, the framing is the framing is the framing. I mean, I don't care what your frame is when you're shooting as a camera operator. It's all about the frame. It's all about the composition, and that will probably never, ever change. I can't see it changing. I've never used a joystick. There's certain aerial cameras and certain cameras like that use a joystick. I've never used one. Not to say I never will. I do want to touch on something I think is very important that should never be lost if you're going to be a camera operator. You need to know the gear head. It's super, super important. Now, a lot of directors of photography, if they came up and didn't come up through the ranks and didn't use them, they feel uncomfortable having a gear head on the set and say, "Oh, we're just going to have fluid heads for everything," because he or she may have to get in there and operate the camera, and they don't want to look like they don't know how to operate the wheels, which takes time and effort to learn. You can do a lot of great shots with fluid heads, but for like pinpoint accuracy, to have a gear head, there's nothing like it. And if you don't know a gear head and a telescopic crane comes onto the set, it's not coming on the set with joysticks. It's coming on with wheels and a remote head. And I implore anybody who wants to be an operator to learn a gear head. And there's still plenty of them out there, because you will use it. And it's a lot more accurate. I can say for sure that the one thing that is always gets me a little butterflies is, and I did LA Law, and I've done other years of court shows. When somebody is in the courtroom and they stand up to object, there's a couple things you need to know. It's like, you go to the actor in the rehearsal, they may jump up to object at different times, and it's like you're just hanging onto those wheels, those knobs. It's like, when are they going to jump up? When are they going to object? Because you don't want to. I'll demonstrate here, but it's like, without you guys tilting up, it's like they go to object and go, "I object," and they stand up like that. Or they may say, "I object," and you're ready for it. Or they may say, "I object," and sit down. And you've got all these variables, And the last thing you want to do is cut their head off as they stand, or get ahead of them and they're going to go. And you do this, and then you catch them. And to me, that remains, and other camera operators too, it remains one of the hardest ones to do. With a fluid head, you go and make that tilt, and you get a little bit of that momentum shift that will shift at the end after a fast tilt up. Same thing with a pan. But with a gear head, you know that person pretty much is going to stand up, and it could be a full turn or whatever it is. You get that muscle memory after rehearsing with them, and it's just like positive, and then they sit down. And then if they're going to do it again, you know that they're going to jump up, and they're going to be that pretty much that same height, and you can. But you just have to nail that in the beginning. It's one of the hardest jobs as a camera operator, and one of the best reasons for using a geared head. As camera operators, the equipment that we may want to own is going to be a lot less than when we were camera assistants. As a camera assistant, I was allowed to rent a certain amount of equipment. Filters. I bought a whole 2 or 3 sets of round polas. I had Ronford tripods. I had an O'Connor 100 fluid head. I had a rocker plate. And I was able to rent those things. Other guys got into those things, plus batteries and other items like lambda heads, and those are high-ticket items. As operators, we don't really have that much. Some guys, they can buy a gear head like an Airy head or a Mitchell head, and they can put it on and get a rental for that, and they're comfortable with their own gear. I don't bring in anything anymore. There's nothing I really have to rent. It's a little harder to rent these days, depending on the production. It makes sense if you can rent things. It can be lucrative. First thing I ever rented was a cart to push around the Panaflex lenses and magazines and batteries, and it was like a Sears cart, and then, I mounted some wood on it, and that was my first rental. As operators, there's not a whole heck of a lot that we need to bring in. It's if you're working with a director of photography who works a lot and he likes certain things, and he doesn't want to buy it, and he says you can buy it, I think that's fine. Some people own cameras. It's not like in the days of Panavision where you could only lease the cameras. There are cameras out there today that can be bought and rented, leased back to the company, especially Steadicam guys. I don't do Steadicam. I never got into it, but guys buy their own rigs. You're looking at over $100,000. So you better know that that's what you want to do, that you're going to be good at it, and you'll make money renting it and knowing your own equipment, and you'll take care of it more than anything that's rented. And that holds true for anything. I think a lot of times production people forget that if you're renting your own equipment, you're going to make sure it's in pristine condition, and it's a good thing. Many years ago, from what I've heard from people I worked with a lot, the best way to get, since we're talking about camera in this case, it could work the same for grip, electric, editors, is in the old days, you pretty much had to know somebody, and in the camera guild, it was pretty much a closed shop. It was called Camera Union, basically. It only became called Guild recently. But to get into the Camera Union, you're probably a relative, a friend of a friend, a producer's friend. I mean, it's a coveted union to be a part of, and it's great if you can be. Many times, people who got into camera worked at studios in the messenger department, the loading rooms, and that was a stepping stone to get in. Now, you could be a messenger, like director of photography I worked with for 16 years, Richard Rawlings Jr., who I still stay in contact with and had lunch with recently. He was a messenger along with a few other guys who were still working as directors of photography, and went from messenger. They got into the loading room at Warner Brothers, and then they got into the union, and They did that for a long time, and then they were sent out on shows by the head of the camera department. Like I said, back in those days, there was always a camera department head who told, unless a director of photography had a crew, they staffed the crew and they said, you're going to be on this show with this crew, and you're going to be with this director of photography on here, television show, movie, whatever it was. And that actually worked out to my favor, because when I got into the union, I didn't know anybody. I had nobody who I knew in the business. I came to Hollywood not knowing a soul, and got lucky enough to get accepted into the Camera Guild and contact various department heads at different camera departments at the studios. And had anybody on the camera crew have to accept me, I'd have never ever worked, because nobody knew me, and there's no seminars like there are nowadays where you can meet people and have some contact with them. So, I just maybe struck a good chord with some of the people in the various camera departments, and they put me on shows. The way it works now is quite different. There's no camera departments in any of the studios, and they're long gone, for better and for worse. It's great when we can hire people who have hired us, or people we like and know. We can hire them. We don't have to go through a camera department. The best way to get in nowadays, there's a few ways. There are a lot of seminars, as I stated, out there, and there's online seminars like this where you're going to learn about people, and maybe you'll find a way to contact them. There's ways where people get on shows and they're non-union, and maybe you're mixed with people who are in the union who are working on these shows, and they get the okay from the union to work on the shows, and they may remember you. And they'll say, well, if you get in the union, contact me, because I'd like to work with you again. Another way is if you're on a non-union show, whatever you're doing, and it becomes unionized, then you'll get a certain amount of days, and you can eventually join the union and be in the union because your show got unionized. So there's that way. There's certain, I think there's a Directors Guild training program. I don't think Local 600 has a training program at all anymore. But there's so many productions out there. I don't know that I would go to film school necessarily these days, although I want to clarify that. Film schools are great in many ways. They teach you all aspects of what you need to know, which is great. I went because I had no job and I wanted to learn the industry. It kept me busy. I was able to work during the day, go to Columbia College, Hollywood at night, and feel connected with something that I wanted to do. And it was a great thing. And I have friends who teach in film schools, and it's a good thing. But there's there's so many opportunities now to get into the film business. It's not a closed shop like it used to be. And I think it's great to turn it over. I mean, I want to work as much as I can until I don't want to anymore. And it's kind of funny because there was a point in my career I felt like I pretty much knew everybody, but the camera unions probably quadrupled in its numbers over the years. So it's hard to know everybody. And you can't be bitter about those things when you're not working, and you look in the production listings and go, I don't know half of these people. Well, when I got into the union, nobody knew me. And if guys weren't working and they brought me in, I'm sure they said the same thing about me. So we have to take it all with a grain of salt and know the industry is always going to turn over. It happens with actors, producers, writers, directors, ADs, everybody. But the key to success in our business is being a good person, learn all you can about the business, learn all you can about your job, try to do whatever you're told to do, and whatever that is, try to even make it better than what you're given and show incentive. I remember just this season when I was working on this TV series, Bones, where a director, he wanted to start in this interrogation room, and it's all kind of black foam, and the lighting comes from the top for the most part, unless a wall comes out. But he wanted to see the actor come around the interrogation table to the person he was interrogating and then go in front of the camera and then go sit opposite the actor. And it was kind of perplexing for everybody how to do it. And it just kind of dawned on me at that point. It's like, oh, I have an idea. And then you have to realize when you have an idea, you got to deliver. And it's like I had a basic idea how to do it. Because we were seeing the mirror, I thought of a way of doing it. And that was to start on one of the lead actors in a reflection in the mirror, see him come around into frame, rack focus to him, follow him around, dip down to the suspect, dip back up to him as he goes around, dip down again to the suspect. And the reason I thought of doing it that way, because we couldn't start on the actor, because then we would see the camera in the frame, reflection in the mirror. And so I got the camera as low as possible in low mode, and it took a couple of takes, but that was one way of getting the shot that he wanted and not seeing us, because all four walls were in and nobody else could be in there but me, the first assistant, and the dolly grip who had to raise the camera up. And that was quite a challenge. It was a lot of fun. For me, being in the industry this long, I still like to look through an eyepiece. I don't always look through the eyepiece, and I look through the eyepiece a little less than I used to, but you'll find in talking to people, the longer they've been in the business, you feel this connection, whether you're on the fluid head or on the wheels, to be looking through the camera, no distractions. Occasionally you open up your opposite eye just to see if there's something you have to avoid out there, and that's the way I learned. I prefer looking through the viewfinder of the camera, whether it's a film camera or electronic viewfinder. It's this connection that I really enjoy. It doesn't work every time anymore, and I've learned to loosen up a little bit on that when the time comes. Before there were monitors, there was no way around it, and you had to do it that way, and you had to turn your body into a pretzel to get the shot done, because there was no means for electronically putting a monitor anywhere, let alone I got into the business before there was the so-called video village and monitors and things like that. So it's what we miss a little bit as camera operators. I know we'll all move on and it'll be something that goes by the wayside. But when it was, how'd that to the camera operator, the director would say to the camera operator, how was it for you? And you would have to be honest. You'd have to say, oh, I clipped his head a little bit, or I caught a C-stand. We need to go again. And even then they could say, well, I have it somewhere else. Did you get it at this point? And you say yes. Now, there are so many monitors on the set for the director of photography, script supervisor. If there's a DIT or video person on the set, hair and makeup can have their own monitors so they can see if they've got a little flyaway in the hair, that kind of thing. But it's still, we can't relinquish what we think is a good shot, because you'd be surprised how many times they'll say cut, print, move on, and nobody saw what you saw, which is a clip of a C-stand or a frame that you weren't happy with. And was the script supervisor looking down, taking a note? Was the director distracted for a second? And nobody saw that. So when they come to the camera operator, you got to be sure, and you got to say, that wasn't good for here. I know we have it here if you want it, or we should go again. You have to be very decisive. I hope camera operators now and in the future realize the importance of their job and not just slough it off to somebody else. That's the way everybody from the beginning of making motion pictures had to trust the person looking through that viewfinder to say, yes, it was good. And that's the way I think it should always remain. Advice for me, it was more learning how to conduct myself on the set by working with really good people who didn't get rattled. Occasionally you'd see people get rattled and they'd like to rattle other people. That's not my demeanor. And I think just being a good person, listening, eavesdropping a little bit sometimes, what works, what doesn't work. I've seen operators and assistants who have fallen by the wayside, and they pick themselves up and they go elsewhere, but maybe not asked back on shows. It's happened to me. It happens to probably everybody. That the more you learn by other people's mistakes and don't make them, at least not on that set. And if it's a real truism, then learn it and take it wherever you go. You know, 2 ears, 1 mouth. You know, listen and offer ideas when you think of them. I can't sit on a good idea if I think it's worthwhile, but I'll listen first and see if there's an opening to say, what do you think about this? And then you throw it in into the arena of the director of photography and the director. One thing you don't want to do for the most part is go to the director without going to the director of photography first, because what you might suggest to the director may not work for the lighting that the cameraman has planned, and then you've skirted around your immediate boss, who's the director of photography, when you're the camera operator. So you don't want to do that. And if the director tells you to do something that's contrary to the director, if the director tells you something that's contrary to the director of photography, and you know it, then you got to be a diplomat and you got to figure out everybody's on the same page here. What would you like me to do? Or do you want to do it two different ways and take the best way later? So you have to learn the politics of the job. It's super important to be proactive. I heard a director of photography say about a camera operator one time, well, he didn't bring anything to the party, which means they don't want you to step on their toes, but they also want you to be looking out for the things that they don't have time to look for at all times. So we have to be very cognizant as camera operators what's important for the shot. And I look at every shot like I'm the audience. And if I don't think the audience is going to understand it or we miss something, I will say, and hopefully I don't get reprimanded for it, but would you like to get this shot, or do you want to rack focus at this point to highlight something in the background and then come back to it, maybe on take 2. So as far as advice, listen, ask questions to your heart's desire, and just try to be observant. I mean, we're in camera, we want to be observant. That goes for all crafts. And then go outside of what you're working on, look at movies, television shows, whatever, art in magazines, art in museums, and see what's out there. And you may not think of it in literal terms, but it may resonate with you later. So absorb everything in life that you can, because this is an art form that gathers from many sources. I've been a member of the Society of Camera Operators since the 80s when I was a camera assistant, and I knew a camera operator at the time, Bob Marta, who was the first president of the SOC, and I thought it an honor to be invited into that society. And I moved up to camera operator in 1989. In 1995, I was tapped to be president of the SOC. Being president of the SOC could be a full-time job, but nobody can do it because it doesn't pay. So we do as much as we can, as often as we can, and the best ones just dive in with both feet. Came up with a camera and remote crane seminar at the back lot of Warner Brothers in 1996 with a few other SOC members. That kind of morphed into what we know as Cinegear right now, which is hugely popular once a year. That's currently at Paramount Studios. And it was more of a hands-on event where we had techno cranes, steady cams, and all kinds of camera equipment, made a lunch out of it, and had a really good time. And it was, for SOC members, it was a big hit. And we did that for a few years. There was another event that lasted for years called Showbiz Expo. Got really huge at the convention center in LA. I think there was one in New York at the same time. That one went away for a while. I think it may be coming back, but the Cine Gear Expo that's on now has its roots in what we did in 1996 and beyond through the SOC. One thing I can say about being a member of the SOC is the networking availability with seminars, meetings, the great amount of technical events that our corporate members put on for the SOC members. And I can tell you one thing, in this business, networking is everything. I can't tell you maybe more than 3 or 4 times I ever got a job off a resume. It's all who I knew, who knew me. We liked each other, or they recommended me to somebody else. I have worked thousands of hours based on recommendations through networking, and specifically through the SOC. It's a wonderful organization. It promotes the camera operator. We're not just the part of the camera crew that is one part, we're a part of the whole. And the SOC promotes the camera operator, makes it distinctive from the director of photography. When you hear the word cameraman, it's too inclusive as too all-inclusive. But to really highlight what the camera operator does, the SOC does it so well. I'm a proud member, and I think it's just a great organization. To date, we've donated approximately $200,000 to the Vision Center at Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, and in great part because the founders picked that as their designated charity, and not a lot of organizations in this business have a charity that they can donate to. We make short films that garner them grant money every year, and we donate to them every year. So it's a good feeling to know that you're part of an organization that doesn't only do good things for camera operators, and we have associate members as well, but for kids who really need the help. So very proud member of the SOC.